Welcome to my channel where we try to answer the great mysteries of the universe. Like, why do babies cry? Or why is it that when you reach 43 years old, your back is always aching? Today, though, we are going to explore another of life's great mysteries. Namely, this video which was posted by Reddit user u/fun hobby93. Now, the original post is just 3 sentences long and goes like this. I was in the army for 6 years, so I'm used to being around death. But this one time, Jesus Christ. He then attached 2 pictures to the story. One of them is a picture of an open grave with a mound of dirt beside it. The other is a CCTV screenshot of a woman who appears to be climbing out of the very same grave. So without further ado, let's jump into the comments and see what theories the community had about this terrifying tale. Comment number 12 is from user MC Muppet, and they say, "She didn't come from the grave. You just dug her up while she was still alive." That would be a terrible thing to happen, but if she wasn't dead to begin with, then that would solve a lot of this mystery. Honestly, I think that's a really good point. If our original poster had been digging a fresh grave, and he accidentally hit this woman's head, or accidentally woke her up by putting a shovel in her chest, this could explain everything. Plus, if she had been buried alive, she would probably want to get the hell out of there as fast as possible. It would also explain why she's only in the CCTV footage. Maybe she got out of the grave, ran to safety, and then left the cemetery altogether. That said, it wouldn't exactly be the most horrifying scenario, as Op mentioned being used to being around death. And I have to imagine if he saw a person covered in dirt and grime slowly emerge from a freshly dug grave, he would at least question whether or not he had accidentally killed somebody. User Weird Uncle Theo says, it's actually called coffin flotation. Apparently it happens when water seeps into the coffin and makes it buoyant enough to float up to the surface. There have been cases of this happening. Okay, now, I don't know why I didn't think of this right away, especially because I live in Florida where swamp people are real. This is definitely something that could happen in the American South. If there was a recent rainstorm, this grave may have filled with water, and the buoyancy of the water would have lifted the coffin to the surface. This is even more likely considering that coffins aren't always buried deep. In fact, in some cemeteries in the American South, they only dig graves 18 inches deep. Of course, this would mean that Op is a terrible person for trying to dig deeper than 18 inches. So maybe he was digging another grave. Hey, this grave hadn't been filled in yet. There are lots of different scenarios that could play out here. User Pipistrello adds, the ground is frozen solid. Where I live, the ground can freeze so hard that even a bulldozer has trouble digging through it. Sometimes, if there's water in the ground, it will rise up and break the surface in the spring when it thaws, almost like a geyser. So if it was cold when the woman died and the Op is digging in the spring, then this could be a possibility. Now, I had never thought of this before, but in Canada, when you go to a cemetery, there is often a sign at the entrance warning you that the ground is not fully frozen and that you should not dig any deeper than 18 inches, because you could collapse the hole. So if this woman had been buried during the winter and the ground had become frozen, it's very possible that she could have risen up out of her grave. But then why didn't she move after she got out of the grave? Well, we don't know if she did move. After all, the CCTV camera doesn't show what happened after she got out of the grave. Maybe she ran off and that's why she's not in the second picture. Or maybe she sat there for a while, thinking about how ridiculous a situation she was in before finally slinking back down into her grave. Then again, if she were thinking clearly, she would have known that the best course of action would be to make her way to the nearest road and flag down a car and then call the police and tell them that somebody had buried her alive. But speaking of the pictures, that leads us to comment number 11 from user Freshly Baked, and they say, Op, why are you taking pictures of your grave with your phone, and why isn't the screen on? So why does the ground look so disturbed around the edges of the grave? They then expand a little bit on their theory, saying this looks like a body that was already buried, then dug up. If it was a fresh grave and the Op was digging it, it seems like they would have stopped when they hit a body instead of just continuing to dig. And yeah, this is true. If I were digging a grave and I suddenly saw a corpse, I would stop and investigate. I would also probably stop because I would be terrified. So the fact that Op continued to dig after seeing this woman suggests that she was already buried. So we have 2 distinct possibilities here. Either the ground was frozen and she emerged from the grave, or she was buried alive and the ground was saturated with water, which made her coffin buoyant. And this brings us to comment no. 7 from user The Pretender 100 who asks, was she breathing? Because if she was, that's not good. To which user Spam Jester replied, yeah, what they said. Also OP, please tell us if she was still breathing because this is quite possibly life or death. Now, I don't know why nobody asked this in the original post, but it's a very important detail. If this woman was breathing, then the water theory is definitely true. And since she managed to climb out of the grave, that means that she was strong enough to claw her way up out of the earth. But if she was breathing, then she would also need medical attention because she may have suffocated for some time, and that's not healthy. If the woman was not breathing, well, that could mean a few things. It could mean that she had already died and the op just made a horrible mistake by accidentally exhuming a corpse. Or it could mean that she had been buried alive and had suffocated, meaning that she was still stuck in this world but could no longer interact with it. Now, if you ever watch Criminal Minds, then you know that when a murder victim has been strangled, they're often brought back to life by doctors because strangulation only kills 60% of the time. Of course, there is a chance that if the blood flow to her brain was cut off for too long, she may have suffered permanent damage. But the important detail here is that she was still warm, which means that she was still alive. So to wrap this up, the most likely solution is that the ground was frozen and the woman was able to claw her way out of the grave. Then she realized that she had already died and that she was stuck in a sort of purgatory between the living and the dead. So she climbed back into the grave and waited for the sun to come back up the next day. But what do you think happened here? Let me know in the comments below. And while you're down there, make sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I've been your host, and until next time, don't forget John shot first.